I think that we are mostly here. We will continue to welcome people into our exciting event here that we're having on Zoom together. So excited to have the Scotts here with us. And let me introduce them to you as we start. I have just hit record. But before I introduce, if you are doing continuing education for your license today and you need the continuing education certificate, please make sure that you type your name into the chat so we have a record of your attendance, and we'll ask you to do that at the very end too when we're finishing with that. And that's all you have to do. We will send you an evaluation sheet that's going to come to you probably tonight, tomorrow morning. So if you can get that filled out by next week, then we'll be able, by the end of next week, we'll be able to get you your CE certificate for this event. So welcome. So glad to have everybody here. Let me introduce to you our colleague and friend, Dr. Stacie Otey Scott, and her husband, Jason. We're so excited to have you guys as speakers for us. Dr. Scott has been recognized in our community and the larger area, and her name is getting known around the world, really. And I'm very excited that she has taken the time to spend with us. She has a radio personality and showcase with the calldrsos.com website. If you haven't been there yet, you should spend some time there, as well as a presence in various online entities like Twitter and YouTube. She's written some popular articles like Unfaithful Stories of Betrayal, where she has been offering some of her expertise on that. She is the Executive Director of Community Wellness at Summit Wellness Center at the Mount. That position has provided her with an opportunity to serve women in the We Win movement, as well as with relationships. And that's what they'll be talking with us about some today. She's had research in a variety of ways with organizations like the American Psychological Association, Christian Association for Psychological Studies. She's had positions in local family medicine practice in Eastern Virginia Medical School and Centera in working with behavioral medicine and patient-centered medical care. So we could go on, but probably the most important thing to know about Dr. Scott is that she is an alumni of the doctoral program at Regent University from back in the day. From a while ago. I won't give it away, but we're so excited to have you with us and to hear what the two of you have to say to us today about effective ministry to families within church settings and in Christian counseling kinds of settings. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be amongst peers and to be with particularly Dr. Jen and Dr. Sells, because they actually taught me most of everything I know. So if it's not good, blame it on them. If it's good, we're going to say, thank you, Lord. So we are just very happy to be here. And I'm really excited to be here with my husband when we realized we had the opportunity to speak to you all about one of the ministries that's a part of our passion. We're just really super excited. So we're not going to delay. We have more information than I think we thought we would have. And we definitely want to leave opportunities for questions and conversation. So again, we appreciate that you guys have been putting things in the chat. Continue to do that. We monitor that and we'll respond to questions throughout and comments. And we'll certainly have some time at the end for questions and comments. Jay, if you can go ahead and share our screen.
Sure. And while I'm doing that, can everyone hear us okay? Just want to make sure of that. Great. Fantastic. Seeing the nods.
So Dr. Jen did an amazing job introducing me. I'm not going to go all the way back down memory lane, but I will say that I was a part of the class of 2007. They are getting my PsyD doctoral degree that has served me really, really well. And when I heard her say back in the day, y'all, I felt kind of old. 2007 didn't seem like it was that far back in the day, but at 2021, I guess it was back in the day. So really excited to be here. Had a lot of amazing firsts there at Regent, being a part of the Regent community. So very excited to be able to give back. One of the firsts is that I believe, and Jen, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think I was the first intern there to intern at the Hampton VA. Loved that experience. Y'all, everywhere I have worked since I graduated from Regent, I've said it's my last place I'm going to work. I'm going to stay there forever, everywhere. And that hasn't been true, but I've had some pretty amazing experiences. So Dr. Jen went over the fact that I was at EVMS, thought I was going to be there forever. I did a postdoc fellowship there. And then I got transitioned into a large Christian community at the Mount. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Mount, we're going to give a little bit of details about the Mount coming up so that we can orient you to what that experience is like as we talk about effective couples ministry and building an effective couples ministry or marriage ministry for Christian couples. So I've had amazing opportunities, but I think the best has probably been, and very unforeseen early in our marriage, the fact that Jason and I get to do ministry together.
Sure.
And as of this year, he became a licensed minister at the Mount. So very proud of him, y'all. Shout out to him for that major accomplishment. We could not see this coming when we were dating as college sweethearts. So I say, but God. Let the church say amen.
Amen.
So very excited. But his expertise, along with my expertise, has really allowed for us to combine our experiences together. We actually were college sweethearts and were in the School of Communications at NSU. So we've brought a lot of our background experience to what we're doing today. So that's why we feel pretty comfortable, on air, so to speak, and pretty comfortable with one another, considering we've been together for 30 years. I would hope that we're really comfortable with one another at this point. When I started consulting at the Mount in 2009, Jason started volunteering at the Mount.
More like voluntold. True.
Volunteering part-time. And then when I went full-time at the Mount in 2012, he volunteered for a little while there full-time.
That was volunteering.
That was volunteering.
Yes.
So we have been doing ministry in various forms for several years now and are very excited about how God has allowed us to impact our church and our community. I'm going to let you tell a little bit about yourself so folks get to know you.
Yeah.
And then we can jump in.
Okay. All right. Sure. So we don't even bother talking about my CV. As long as her CV is and as decorated as it is, there's just no space. Okay.
Whatever.
There just isn't any space. Let me advance the slide. But my professional discipline, as Dr. Scott alluded to, is in digital marketing and technology. I have spent time there since '94. As soon as I graduated, after throwing a very good party, one of the guys woke up on my couch and said, "You know what? You'd probably be good at marketing. Why don't you come past our office on Monday and let's talk about it?" And that gave birth to my career in marketing and in technology. My uncle reminds me that I, at the age of 5, told him I was going to be an entrepreneur and he had to go look up the word. So apparently speak it and it becomes truth. And because I was speaking it at the age of 5, and that is truly what I have done with my life thus far, is I have focused on what's the next thing going to be. And Doc has really been patient and rode with me through some of the highs and some of the lows, and not a lot of middle ground. It's always peaks, it seems like. So maybe that's why we're at the Mount. Okay.
You know what?
That's bad fun.
Okay.
But anyway, and so as Doc has also said, it's part of what allows us to really come together. And as she focuses on relationships, I've always had the opportunity to focus on the business aspect and the technology aspect and understand how all those things kind of coalesce, come together for the sake of our businesses and for the sake of ministry. I've been in ministry with this lady for over 10 years now. And I was serious when I said I was voluntold initially. I saw she was about to go through some struggles, and I can't stand this lady's struggle at all.
Oh.
So I came in, applied some of my know-how, and we together really built the Summit Wellness Center. Mm-hmm. She fired me in the first week of being at Summit Wellness Center. That's not a joke. She fired me, said I was too bossy, and that she rather have a husband than a ministry leader who was too bossy. So she literally fired me. And I tell you, God smacked me upside the head and said, "You messed this up. You're in for a long road." And so I went in there, I basically pleaded and begged for her to let me stay and had to write up conditions.
I forgot.
So that I would improve my behavior and allow her to be the boss that she was called to be. And that was really the start of our relationship with her as the executive director and me as a ministry leader. And that's translated very well into business with the Dr. SOS companies. where we have positioned her. She's the star, she's the draw, and I am the support. And on occasion, she allows me to get on camera like today. And as she also mentioned, yes, as I've walked down this road, God has surrounded me by so many ministers. It started to rub off, apparently. And he told me, guess what? Step it up, sir. And so I decided I wanted to step up my theology as well as my role for those people who we were, helping and serving. Yes, absolutely. And so I respected God's call and set on the path to get licensed as a minister. And so here we are today.
Here we are today.
Yes.
So y'all, I did fire him. I fired him 3 times. I mean, and here's the thing about couples. Within the first week, I fired him 3 times. Here's the thing about couples ministry. If you're going to engage in effective couples ministry, it's really important that as a couple, you have a solid foundation, a strong foundation, because if any of you all have engaged in ministry before, and I'm sure you have, you know that there is a great side to doing ministry together, but there's also your inner me that can show up at any time, and the enemy that can show up at any time to test, your bond and your connection. So early on, we had to come to an agreement. We had a couple of come to Jesus moments, and y'all, Jesus won. He always wins. So I'm happy to say that we are here together. We are going to jump right into a little bit more about the Mount. I think it's important that we kind of orient everyone to where we are, because that will help you gain some insights if you're trying to start a couples ministry or a marriage ministry, because not all churches are the same. The demographics may not be the same. The size may not be the same. Resources and available opportunities may not be the same. We were fortunate and blessed enough to be under the leadership of Bishop and Elder Valerie Brown. And we are at the Mount, that is Mount Lebanon Baptist Church in Chesapeake. For those of you all who don't know, that is one of the local mega churches. And we'll give you a couple of numbers behind that, what we mean by mega churches. But one of the things that really helped to set us up for success in building a couples ministry is the fact that they provided us with opportunity and resources. So the opportunity and resources that were probably most beneficial to us was the fact that they lent us their credibility as leaders. When I came on in 2009, and Jason eventually came alongside under Summit Wellness Center, initially, that's all I was working on. I was a contract employee with them for Summit Wellness Center. One of the first things they did very early on was talk to our partners. That's what we call our members and our congregants, our partners, and introduce us formally to the church partnership. That introduction has been everything. They lent us their credibility and their platform, and they made all the resources they had available that they thought we'd need accessible to us. So whenever you're talking about starting any kind of ministry, that buy-in from leadership, that commitment from them early on, them not just saying, okay, we have some new leaders here and moving on, but using their platform to allow you to have a moment with the congregation, and for the congregation to get to know you as people is really important, because that starts developing that early relationship where you have that vested interest in the community, and they start seeing you as one of them, so to speak. So while we had been partners at the Mount for a while, we had not stepped into that leadership role. Probably 4 years into our time at the Mount as partners is when we started doing leadership there.
I also think it's really important to point out that they didn't just introduce us one time. There's joy in repetition, and they leverage repetition to put us in front of the congregants and lend us that credibility multiple times over the course of months. Before you came on full time, Bishop started introducing the idea. Then when she came on full time, he repeatedly, Sunday after Sunday, reminded them to use the services, leverage the services at Summit Wellness Center. Dr. Scott and her team are here. So it really takes a little bit of repetition to make that stick.
Right. So that top-down approach, being visible and being intentional from our leaders in terms of doing what we like to call a warm handoff, was there from the very beginning. When I started out at Summit, they certainly talked about mental wellness and mental health. And so I did that for a couple of years before I went full time, and then had other ministry opportunities. But in that, it wasn't just this kind of interruption in service where he would talk about who we are and what we're doing. He would kind of include us in the conversation. And I don't know if you have experienced pastors who reach out directly to the parishioners and call them by name or is intentional about recognizing. He did that, and he would be very honest about his own struggles. That's one of the things that we really like about the Mount, is that our leadership is transparent to the degree that they believe it's going to be helpful for the partners to recognize that we're in this thing together. So he would say things like, when he was talking about, he's preached on depression and other kind of mental wellness issues or concerns, and he would say, y'all, this is one of my struggles. Maybe I need to go see Dr. Scott, and just kind of throw it out there. Maybe I need to go down to Summit. Some of y'all need to go down to Summit, and just keep putting that there so that people know they were lending us their credibility. They believed in us even when we didn't believe in ourselves and we didn't really know what we were doing. And so they made that transition very smooth. But the other thing that was helpful is that we really had an alignment in our philosophies. So part of the Mount's philosophy is church is supposed to change lives.
Right.
That's, if you walk into our primary office in Chesapeake and the admin building, you'll see on the wall, church is supposed to change lives in big gold letters. Our leaders are community oriented and very much about helping, improving, and serving our community. But the other thing that we learned very early on under their leadership is that as a church, they were more interested in relationship than religion. And that's really, really important, because I think that some people can get lost in some of the constructs of religion and lose sight of God's original intention, which is for us to be in healthy relationships. And that's a part of our beliefs as Dr. SOS, but just kind of how we live our lives as well. We believe that life is about relationships, and there's a hierarchical order to those relationships. So first, we want to be in a great relationship with God. Then we want to be in a great relationship with ourselves. If Stacie doesn't like Stacie, who else is going to like Stacie? And then we want to be in great relationships with everyone else around us. So our philosophies really wed together nicely to allow us to engage in ministry that was synchronous. Let's give you a little bit more information about the Mount and why it's called a megachurch.
Sure. So the Mount has 9 locations between Virginia and North Carolina. There are 2 locations in North Carolina, and then, wow, so many locations now here in Hampton Roads. Bishop has a very distinct focus and a heart for Hampton Roads, and he wanted to make sure that every corner of it was covered. And so he sent site pastors out to basically every city to start building branches of the Mount. So we have somewhere between 15,000 and 18,000 partners. I don't know if we keep the greatest count, or maybe I'm just not privy to it anymore as much as I used to be. But we have always kind of, for about the last, I'd say 5 years or so, been floating between that number, with the majority of the partners being here in Hampton Roads. The Mount has 60 employees, but it's predominantly volunteer supported. Each year we have a celebration for volunteers,
Yes.
where we celebrate them. They get fed, they get awards, they really get recognized. And we're talking about 400 to 500 people show up.
And that's just for one site. That's for our Chesapeake campus.
That's just for our Chesapeake campus, right? That show up just for the Chesapeake campus to celebrate and to be celebrated. So the network of volunteers is really what goes on to support the executive directors, because executive directors, which are basically, the management of the church, are responsible for, each executive director now is responsible for multiple ministries. Mm-hmm. Like Doc, I think you support somewhere between 6 and 9 different ministries at any given time. So at any given time, she probably has to manage somewhere between 40 and 70 or so volunteers. And she does that in just a really magnificent way. She's a better manager than I'll ever hope to be.
He's trying to get brownie points. He's trying to get brownie points.
But she really does. Her ministry leaders really go to bat for her, and they deliver for her time after time after time to allow her to really deliver some really positive things back to God's people.
Yeah, my volunteers are the bomb,
Yes.
and I let them know. So a part of why it's important to understand just some of the background of the Mount is to let you know that no matter how large or how small your church is, you can start an effective counseling ministry and do so with whatever resources and opportunity you have right there. we happen to come into a ministry where it's significantly larger and we have a significant amount of support. But to be honest, y'all know the 80-20 rule. So we have 20% of our volunteers who are very, very consistent. And given that some of the events that we've done, it's been a team of 3 or 4 or 5 who initially put those events together, and we can bring the rest of the volunteers on late in the game when we just need them to kind of act out the different roles and responsibilities of serving the partners. So we don't want you to get overwhelmed with the largeness of our church and think, oh, we serve a really small church, we have a really intimate church, and that we might not be able to do this effectively. You absolutely can, because while the church is large, we have really small ministry teams that get everything started. So stay encouraged.
I'd also point out that when we first showed up at the Mount, it was probably more like 1,100 partners, which is still a pretty large church. But we've been there for kind of the exponential growth of it. And it's been amazing to watch and to witness.
Yeah. The global ministry that we have, especially since COVID, has really allowed the Mount to expand and grow. But that also means that services are looking a little bit different. So we're going to talk about that as well as we go through how to create an effective ministry. I oversee right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ministries. Summit Wellness Center, Seed, which is seeing evidence every day, and that's evidence of God. We love that ministry. Lots of activation moments where we connect people with the Holy Spirit and show them how readily available He is.
It's our discipleship ministry.
Yes, it is. Marriage Talk, which is an offshoot of Bishop's book by the same name, that tells you up front that as a leadership couple, they are very interested in couples, very interested in marriages. They engage couples as ministry leaders. So it was kind of, as Jason was saying, he was voluntold in the beginning. Well, it's the model that's there for us. They lead as couples. So it was a really good model, and it has encouraged us to grow in ministry as a couple as well. We have Kingdom Life and Learning Groups that we both oversee, which is our small groups ministry. And I oversee Health and Wellness. And our newest ministry, our revamped ministry, which is our couples ministry, is Love Is.
And so what we're going to do is we're going to jump right into talking about Love Is, because that's pretty much why you guys are here today, is to talk about building an effective couples ministry. So over the course of, we started this back in October of 2020.
Yeah, last year. It's only been a year.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Sure. And out of the gate, we had some really good participation. One of the things the Mount can do really well is really promote internally to its partners about activities and draw focus and really have strong call to actions that make people move. And I will tell you repeatedly, as the marketing guy, it's required. Bishop just happens to be a really good marketing guy. Dr. Sells has a question. Go right ahead, sir.
Actually, no, I hit that by mistake. So I'm sorry to
No problem. We'll just call it a high five.
Hi.
Yeah, call it a high five.
Hi.
All right. And so once Bishop starts saying from the pulpit, guess what? We're bringing up a new couples ministry and marriage ministry. We want everybody to focus on and be a part of it. We get that initial push. And then after that, it's kind of up to us as the ministry leaders to make sure that we're gathering information, most importantly, email addresses that allow us to continue to deliver messages and announcements and call to actions to those groups. So in the last 12 months, as you can see on screen, we've had the pleasure of serving close to 1,100 spouses. We say spouses because sometimes one spouse is there, the other one isn't. So we keep that number separate in our reports. In our largest event, which is our Valentine's Day event, we had 189 households represented. And it was very exciting. I think that we're going to talk a little bit more about that, so I won't steal all the thunder from it. But we were able to just really create a nice experience for everybody who was trapped in their homes for, I was about to say Thanksgiving because that's on my brain, but for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, due to COVID. So, and he said trapped in their homes intentionally. I believe we all felt trapped at that time. I think that's probably when the excitement started wearing off.
Yes.
For some of us. It's okay to be at home for like a week with everybody, day in, day out. Beyond that, it was starting to feel a little closed in. I was starting to get a little claustrophobic, but we were able to put together a really nice Valentine's Day event for our couples. And these numbers may look small in comparison to the numbers we presented before, but remember, with your couples or marriage ministry, you're talking about a segment of your population that's at your church. And also you're talking about the for us, we have 9 campuses. We were talking about one campus. So a segment of that population from one campus. And so those numbers for us, particularly having to transition to an online platform, we were really excited about, and our leadership, they were really impressed.
Sure. And Love Is actually was never a traditional platform. It was birthed into the virtual world.
Absolutely.
Right.
So it wasn't necessarily a new ministry, but it was a reimagined ministry from what we used to call Marriage Academy, which was our events kind of couples ministry. It was more event based. And we're going to talk about why that's important as we talk about developing your couples ministry. So this was our Valentine's Day experience, Cook, Eat, Love. And we actually had a cooking class. And we sent out the invitations with all the information about what folks were going to need. We had a couple who are partners at the church who own their own business give us a cooking class online, and we had a DJ, so we had the entertainment there, and we had lots of giveaways and just lots of engagement. We took lots of breaks for people to kind of engage and dance and be on screen and really try to participate and connect, which was really important given that we were used to doing everything in person. We wanted to try to push the boundaries with online to see how far we could get people to connect in a meaningful way, even though we're just looking at a screen. And it turned out really, really good. We had a lot of fun.
So everybody knows that on Sundays, that's the big show. And, you know, the budget goes towards the big show. But if I can talk about the technical requirements really quickly about, you know, something like this virtual event that we did for Cook, Eat, Love, we basically had a 2-camera setup. We had a production person who was in the house and was basically monitoring chat and going between cameras, making sure that there was an eye on what we were doing in the kitchen. And then we were able to step up and just have an intense focus on another camera that was a little bit closer, just to switch up the view a little bit. Got to tell you, we're doing all this from one laptop. Okay.
So when we say you can do this, even
Sure.
if you have a small budget and a smaller ministry, you really can. What matters is having people who know how to do some of these things. And I believe that God equips each church with exactly what they need to be able to be that place in the community that He's called that church to be.
And one of the benefits of the last almost 2 years is that production expectations have come down quite a bit. So we've seen newscasters who are, you know, producing national shows in the morning shows from their homes. So our expectation for production has come down, which allows us who are already trying to do it on the low end, low budget kind of deal to really look like we are standing up and can stand next to some of the national shows that are on television. So it's a huge benefit and value, and the learning curve is not that steep.
Yep. Good stuff. We're going to jump into Marriage Ministry 101 to just give you guys a little bit of background of how we decided, you know, what Love Is was going to be. So one of the first things that we have to do is consider what you're building. You know, are you looking for a couples ministry versus a marriage ministry? Because those are two different things. They can be. So it's important for you as a leader to get with your senior leaders to make sure that y'all are speaking the same language and on the same page as to what you're building. Why does it matter? Why does that matter? A couples ministry versus a marriage ministry? What kind of differences do you guys think can be there? If you have a comment, you can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. But we want to engage with you all. So why do you think it's important to determine it's going to be a couples ministry versus a marriage ministry? We're looking. Yes, Michelle, right? Thank you for jumping in so quickly. Not all couples are married. And so some of the principles of your church and leadership really matters here, because what you may talk about amongst married folk, you may not necessarily want to talk about amongst those who are not married and they're just couples. What's a major topic that folks might want to avoid or might feel uncomfortable talking about with people who are couples versus married?
Yep.
So go ahead.
Michaela says that some couples may not believe in marriage. Absolutely true.
Gayla and Gabby, y'all hit the nail on the proverbial head. Sex.
That's right.
Sex. You win. So the reality is that we have some very specific views about engaging in sex, and we believe that it is for married couples. That is our belief at our church. So we have a marriage ministry that, and we have those kinds of conversations because we want to be able to go deep with our married couples, because we know that, there can be a lot of issues that show up in marriage over the course of a marriage. And we want them to be able to feel comfortable talking about whatever those issues are as we engage in our groups and our Love Is meetings. The other thing you want to consider at the start of creating a marriage ministry is there any data that can help us make our decision about what our ministry should look like at our church? So being a behavioral and social scientist, we do like, and then of course he's the marketing guy, we do like making data-driven decisions because we see the benefit of that. So when we started this process, we looked at some of that data can be informal. So we started asking leadership, what were some of the common issues that they saw in our church? It's not all the same. While we may have similar issues, the problems can show up differently. So for example, I believe that all of our issues are rooted in very similar things, but one of the problems that we may have in our church may not be the same problem that shows up in your church. Like it could be money management. That's a really big issue amongst couples and leading the way for people having separations. Our church is a very transient church in terms of the kind of people that we attract. There's a specific name for it that Bishop uses. I can't remember it at the time, but it's like a second time something. But what it basically means is that people are coming from other churches to be a part of our church. So when they come in, they already have some beliefs, some ideas about how church should look or what church should talk about. And so a lot of times we kind of rub up against that because we push the boundaries of what we believe God is calling us to talk about. We believe that he's calling us to have these real conversations in church. But part of what helped Jason and I, beyond that informal, okay, what does our leadership say needs to happen, is using actual data. So the Barna Group, which is one of the groups that does a lot of, provides a lot of data on churches and Christian relationships. We recently pulled up some information they were providing from 2019 that talked about the 3 trends they were seeing in marriage. We're going to go over 2 of them because it's influenced us to some degree as to how we do marriage ministry. So the first one was, and it's good news, this is good news, that divorce rates among church-going Christians are lower than those of non-Christians. So there was a time when they were about the same. And so we were pushing the boundaries of that to see what's happening in our community where we're not necessarily connecting with our biblical beliefs in a way that allows us to have healthy, sustainable marriages. So the Barna Group says that 1 in 4 Americans is a practicing Christian. 41% of marriages in the US have ended in divorce, but divorce rates are lower in our practicing Christian group versus the general public and other religious beliefs. So that gives us some information that we can use in terms of what kinds of topics we want to cover, what kinds of events we want to have, and what is going to be appealing to our particular congregation. Married Christians are significantly more likely than others to understand and embrace forgiveness. That's another trend they found, which we've really pushed the boundaries on that and just made sure that we are rooting our marriages in that concept of grace and forgiveness, because as Christian couples, that's something we can easily connect to with our biblical beliefs.
All right. And it represents our core beliefs about marriage, or at least what it takes to sustain a successful marriage. Is that grace, hope, yep. And what's the third one?
Forgiveness.
And forgiveness. Mm-hmm. I forgive you. Yes.
So,
and the term that you were looking for, I think, is second-fold believer that Bishop uses.
I don't think it's second-fold. It's second something though.
Yeah, second something believer. We'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out. Then we'll let y'all know once we have that part together. So there are some basic questions that you want to ask yourself at the start of creating this ministry. But we also looked at the steps. So we actually went back and reviewed how we came up with Love Is, what was our process, what were we thinking, and came up with 8 practical steps of how we arrived at where we are, which is a successful marriage ministry. So the first step is getting buy-in. Why is this so important? And we've talked about this a little bit before, but this is a crucial aspect of what needs to happen from the very beginning. Why is this so important?
Got to do the pitch, just like Shark Tank. You got to have that core pitch down, that elevator pitch ready to go. And as soon as leadership asks you why, you have to be ready to answer the question. In our case, it was pretty easy because they already had a heart for it, and they were looking for a reason to do something related to couples and not just marriage. So our pitch was very easy. Doesn't necessarily guarantee it's going to be easy for everyone who wants to start a couples ministry. So make sure that you get your elevator pitch, which is 30 seconds. Tell me why, when, and how. Give me all the high points and let me know why this needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that it was truly the way our leadership set us up that really allowed us to come out the gate very strong and have such a successful start to this online, because that's what it is at this point. It's virtual ministry. And again, doing that warm handoff and making sure that we were known as a part of the community and that they trusted us with leading this ministry and leading it well. So the first step is getting that buy-in. The second step is identifying a point couple. Now, some churches will identify a point person. And for other ministry opportunities, we have a point person. But for couples ministry, for marriage ministry, it makes sense to have a couple leading couples. What we found, even in some of the counseling and lay counseling that Jason does, is that having both of us in the room levels the playing field for couples, and they feel like both folks are going to be heard, both folks are going to be represented, both sides of that marriage are going to show up. So you want to be able to identify a point couple. The third step is building a core leadership team. Okay, this was something that was really important to us. And as believers, it's not just about selecting people who look like they'll do a good job, and also being a part of a church, which is an organization and a business organization. Let's not forget that they have processes and protocols in place to make sure they're picking the very best leaders. So we had to go through our leadership, our senior leadership. They made recommendations based on couples they knew and had engaged in relationship with in the community. Some of them they had counseled over years and saw that growth and wanted them there. And they also took our considerations into perspective, considering that we had been a part of the leadership team for other ministries for a while. But the first thing we did, in all honesty, guys, we prayed about it.
Absolutely.
We prayed about it. We cannot reiterate how important it is to include prayer in every step of the process of developing all ministry, but specifically couples, marriage ministry. We know that God has a heart for marriages. And so we want to make sure we're doing things his way. You know, we are walking in his will. And we also wanted to make sure our congregation was represented. So we didn't just pick folks who were in our age group.
Right.
We looked at the diversity amongst our congregants, and we tried to get couples who were younger than us so that they would have the perspective of our millennials and younger, and couples who were a little more seasoned than us so that everyone could be represented.
By the way, I slid under the millennial
Your gray
profile.
Your gray is saying something different.
Yeah, so I slid in there. So I am a millennial. I'm glad to say so. The other thing about the building the leadership team is we're not looking for perfect people. They don't exist. What we were looking for is people who, if there was some turmoil and some struggle and it's sure to come, that it wouldn't spill over into the ministry, that they were mature enough in their beliefs and in their relationship to ensure us that anything that took place in their household, they could either use it for the benefit, for sharing with couples as we overcame this struggle or we overcame this turmoil, or they would be mature enough to say, you know what, we need to take a step back so that this doesn't spill over into any ministry moments, because that's very important. We cannot do anything to damage the trust that we're constantly building with those who are showing up to learn and to gather information about how they can be in relationships as couples.
So we had to decide how many leaders. Again, that's going to be based on your church size and, you know, how many you think you need to build an effective ministry. But we went with 7 couples, and that gave us a really diverse range of ministry leaders and facilitators, and they have different backgrounds. You know, some of them were in ministry, some of them were in counseling, some of them were just lay people who were willing to talk about, you know, how they had to grow in their marriages in order to have a healthy marriage. What we found is that as the leadership couples, we end up doing a lot of life together and encouraging one another. So I remember being and going out for an internship when I was doing my internship application, and I was told to make sure that when I went out, that when I interviewed, that I recognized that people are going to want to know if I'm somebody they'd like to go to lunch with. I remember that specifically in getting coached through preparing for internship. Well, that's also about these small groups. The people we chose, we wanted to make sure that we all connected well together so that we could do life together and have that show up in ministry. The next step is vision casting with your core leadership team. So we sat down and we had meetings and we took other people's ideas into consideration. You got to remember, these folks are a part of the partnership there as well. So we did that. And then we did some strategic planning. Y'all, I cannot say enough about making time to plan for a successful ministry. So we sat down and talked about what worked before and what did not work before when marriage and couples ministry was done in our church. And we started laying out some defined goals that we wanted to make sure that we were covering. Step 6 is creating the core content and program development. That takes a lot of assessment. And again, it can be formal or informal, but you want to provide your partners, your members, the congregants with content and cover topics that they want to hear about. So it's important that you have an understanding of what that is. So we did some surveys, really quick surveys, e-blasts, things like that to, and Bishop again, engaged people from the pulpit and said, let us know what's on your heart, what you'd like to see us do as a part of couples and marriage ministry.
So one thing that you should understand is that program development is about producing. I mean, you almost step into a producer's role.
Yeah.
In terms of conceptualizing what the topics will be, what the experiences will be, how you'll deliver those things. You really end up being the showrunner almost, and that on whatever your schedule ends up being, you have to deliver and you have to work with everybody who's part of the production to make sure that it comes together and is delivered in such a fashion that it is rewarding to those people who show up.
Absolutely. But here's the good news, guys. There are lots of resources and products that you can use as a part of your couples ministry. And we're going to talk about one that we're using as we get ready to wrap up. The next thing that's required is scheduling and promotion. Mm-hmm. So you want to make sure that you are creating a schedule that works within the overall schedule of the church life. Our church is very busy. We have lots of events going on. So we're very intentional about where we're putting things and setting our expectations for how many people we think will be able to participate in that particular event. So we work with a master calendar, and we are trying to make sure that we're offering something quarterly, maybe that might be an event for good times. And then we're offering something every other week just for us to come together and have more intimate conversations and connect as couples. Step 8 is getting feedback from your participants. Kind of makes sense. None of this is rocket science, but it is stuff to kind of think through as you're trying to prepare to have this amazingly successful marriage ministry. We have a promo video that we did to start out introducing Love Is, and we're going to share a bit of that with you now.
Hey, Doc, what you working on?
Hey, babe. Well, it was going to be a surprise because our anniversary is coming up later this month, but I'm actually writing you a love letter.
Oh, really? And what's in this love letter to me?
Well, I'm writing about what love is.
And what is love to you?
Well, love is waking up to make you breakfast, even though I'm not hungry and I have no intentions of eating.
Okay, anything else?
And love is watching Charis and spaghetti westerns, even though I don't like any of those.
Wow. What else?
Love is cleaning the coffee filter without complaining, because you never clean it. And love is letting you snuggle up to me at night, even though I might be having my own personal summer. So, what's love to you?
Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. And it is not proud. And love is you.
Oh, that's so sweet. That's my favorite scripture.
I know.
That's perfect.
Perfect for what?
Well, you know, I've been asked to take the marriage ministry at the Mount to the next level as we push all of our ministries into this 2.0 season. And I think Love is the perfect name for the marriage ministry.
You know what? You're right. It is perfect. And the perfect time to announce it is next week at the Marriage Monday Zoom session. I think we should get together the Love Is team, all the Mount couples, and we should get them together for all their ideas to help us design exactly what this marriage ministry needs to be.
That sounds great. So, join us next Monday for Marriage Monday as we introduce the new marriage ministry, Love Is. We are excited to bring to you Bishop and Elder Val's hearts for all of us as couples. They'd like us to come together and grow stronger in love.
We hope to see you there.
So as you can see and as you can hear, all you need is good elevator music and you got yourself a promo.
So for Love Is, we sat down with our team. We came up with the purpose, which is to extend the concept of covering, caring for, and connecting with Mount couples. Those are the 3 C's that are foundational principles of the Mount. And then we sat down and thought about the goals. The previous marriage ministry was more event driven. We wanted to offer events as a part of the marriage ministry, but we also wanted to make sure that we were offering enrichment training opportunities for couples. So we started with meeting on the 2nd and 4th Monday of every month. We call those Marriage Mondays for Zoom. And we come together, and one of the Mondays is usually lots of fun, lots of activities, games, laughter. And then the next Monday will usually be an enrichment activity. So that's how we kind of created this ministry, and people tend to respond to it well. We tend to have couples who are our repeat couples that we've grown in relationship with, who share and are transparent in what their experience is, which has really opened the door for our men. Hear me say that again, our men to communicate with us about what's going on with them and how they're feeling in their marriages. I see somebody wants to be a part of our team. Come on along. So those are some of the things that we did to set up our Love Is ministry. And at this point, we're just going to kind of walk you through like a 5-minute, 3-minute, looking at the time, 2-minute experience of what Love is like for us. So we normally start with the music. You all heard the music earlier, Love Is?
Yep.
We start there and we pull everyone in the same way we did with you guys. We welcome people in, we call them by name throughout our ministry moments, especially now that we're virtual. We want to make sure people know we see you. Brandy, we see you. We're so glad you're with us. Wanda, thank you so much for joining. Jen, thank you so much for being here and enjoying, because we've seen you laugh and smile a couple of times.
And there's Michelle. She's back again.
Hi, Michelle. Good to see you again. So we do that because that's a way of pulling people in and connecting with them where they feel connected beyond this 2-dimensional screen.
Right. You're doing great. Keep it going.
I see. You all have heard us share the scripture. That's the other piece that you need to come up with, a foundational scripture for your ministry, right, which of course Love Is has led to our 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7 scripture being a perfect fit. At the start of our meetings, we will have our couples say this together. It's a reminder to each other. It kind of level sets the room in case we've been fussing or arguing before we get on, and we have fussed or argued before we've gotten on. So it's a way of coming back together and reminding each other of who God is, what love is, and why we're here. So we're really intentional about that.
We're also very intentional about reminding people that we deal with reality. Okay. So we will talk about if we fuss before coming on camera. Oftentimes we will make that a part of the conversation as we lead in. We don't deny it. We don't try to avoid it. We address it, and we walk through the steps and the rules that we put in front of everybody else.
Right. Yeah. So at the start of the group, we remind people of our group rules, because this is a ministry that requires confidentiality. We remind everyone that what happens in Love Is stays in Love Is. So they know that they can have real talk with us, that these are not sessions that are going back to leadership in any kind of way. This is just an opportunity for us to come together, for God to hear our hearts as couples and to lean in and lean on Him so that our marriages can be stronger.
Now, this really ties back into the selection process for the ministry team. They have to buy into confidentiality. That is something that cannot be breached. We've been at Summit Wellness Center for over 10 years, and we've never had a breach of confidentiality, because we know from the jump, if we were to have one, that could bring everything down on top of our heads immediately.
Yeah, it could be devastating.
Right.
We also, as a part of our virtual experience, we come up with a monthly theme. We have a Love Is homepage, and the couples are able to go there and see what the monthly theme is. This month, it's Thanksgiving is an act of grace and gratitude. So of course, it's November, a time to give thanks, but there's also another reason why that's our theme for the month. It's a theme for the month because we are walking through the Grace Together series that's a part of the Charis Institute at Regent. So Dr. Jen, Dr. Sells, Caitlin have all been very helpful in bringing this series to us. And we are doing that on our 2nd and 4th Mondays of the month, all the way up through January. And our partners are so excited. That's why I say, if you have programming issues, there are resources out there. Don't be afraid. Go find them and use them to help grow your marriage ministry.
And Alicia, we're going to come back because you have a programming question. We're going to come back to that and take some time to answer that, because it's a great question. So we haven't forgotten.
And that is it for the presentation, guys.
Look at that.
It's 12:52. There's a question there, but if you have more questions, please feel free to raise your hand on screen and we'll call on you or put it in the chat.
So I'm going to read off the first question. The question is from Alicia, as we just mentioned. The church that I'm currently in has a biblical counseling training program attached to it. Within that community, there tends to be pushback on integrative psychology. Have you experienced that as you are building your ministry within a church setting?
That's a great question. And the answer is, in a word, yes.
Absolutely.
So I think that a big part of what has helped us, going back to the leadership top-down approach, is having those very intimate conversations with your leadership. I remember Jason and I having a conversation specifically with Bishop about some of our ideas and some of what we wanted to do. And we let him know pretty early on, we need your buy-in for this to work. So if this is something you want to do and you want to see us thrive in, you want to see the church thrive in, here is what we're going to need from you. It's a relationship. All of this is a relationship. I think what takes some of the typical sting out of integrating psychology is when I tend to remind folks that Jesus is the wonderful counselor. Can we have this conversation? We say these things. Do we believe them? Our behavior betrays our beliefs. So if that's what we're saying, why is this an issue? Help me understand what your concerns are so that I can address them, because that's what I would like to do. So that's one of the ways to kind of have that conversation. It levels the playing field with our pastoral leadership, and they're like, oh, you're right. So yeah, let's talk.
Right. And then also we talked about, especially when we're just doing the counseling sessions, when I'm involved in that, I'm not approaching things from really a psychological, hard and fast approach. I am more the conversationalist. Let's try to have more of a common sense approach. That's what I represent. And really, it's you're bouncing things off of the two of us, and I'm going to give you my no nonsense kind of opinion about it, because I'm really no nonsense when we're in counseling sessions, and make sure that you are in touch with the reality of your situation.
But the other part of that is not pushing the psychology integration piece as much as I push the relationship piece.
Sure.
We're here to talk about relationships. And as a psychologist, I've studied this. As counselors, we study these things so that we can help people have healthier relationships. And sometimes that's able to kind of diffuse folks when they're like, we don't want all that psychology talk in here. We're really having conversations as couples and focusing on the relationship. There was a question about being able to access the Charis Institute and what we're doing at the Mount. As a student, you absolutely can. It's open to everyone. So all you have to do is go to our Love Is homepage. Jason will type that into the chat and you can register. So we'd love to have you there. Very excited. There's another question about how, what do you do with cohabitating couples who want to grow as a couple but are not married? That's a great question. We had to deal with that earlier this year as we noticed more people popping into the ministry who were not married. Like they show up single. They were trying to prepare for marriage. Sure. We got emails saying, I'm not married. I know that God has someone for me, but I'd like to know some things before I get married so I can start off on the right foot. And we had a conversation with our senior leadership. We also had a conversation with our facilitators, our Love Is team, and said, guys, how do we want to handle this? Well, we believe that God wants us all to have access to this information, so we welcome them. When we're having conversations that are a little bit more sensitive, we can break off into groups where we can put couples with couples, and our people who are engaged or not yet married, we can have them with another set of facilitators so we can make sure we're having appropriate conversations there that still honor the beliefs of our church.
And then philosophically, there's a strong belief of church beyond the walls of the church. We have to go out there and address the non-believer who is looking for a relationship with God.
Yeah.
And they just don't know necessarily how they can engage. And so we have to be non-judgmental. We have to be engaging. That doesn't mean that we don't stand for our principles. So while there will not be any marriages at our church for, let's say, couples of the same sex, that doesn't mean that we still don't serve them.
Yeah.
They just can't get married at our church. But we serve them. We love them. We serve them like they're anybody else. It's a very non-judgmental kind of atmosphere, and all are welcome.
And I would say that took some growing when we started. That took some growing in our senior leadership. And I think that we've been influential in that. So that's been a great position for us to sit in. But I promise you, you can meet your leaders where they are. And if you're willing to kind of lean into that, rely on and trust God, He will show you how to open those doors and to be able to make space for the kind of ministry He wants at your church. And that's what we've been very clear about. This is not our ministry. This is the ministry that we have the privilege of overseeing and being a part of and supporting. But we're really committed to trying to make sure we're using God's word, doing it God's way, and operating in God's will. And I think that that has been a core part of what has allowed us to be successful and not take some of the pushback so personally.
So do we still have the last 2 minutes? I just want to ask. Okay, great. So a question came in, can a marriage counselor effectively lead a marriage ministry without one's spouse's involvement, especially if the spouse is dealing with mental illness?
Absolutely. There have been times where Jason and I haven't been able to lead a particular ministry moment together, but I do find a counterpart in the church who is male to bring that male perspective. I will never think like a man. And on most days, I think that's good for me. But on some days, I recognize the need for how he thinks, because he thinks differently, needs to show up in that room so that we can connect with our male partners. So you don't have to be married to do this marriage. We do think that there's benefit in having a couple, whether it's a couple in ministry where they're actually married or just a couple who are partners at the ministry together, and it can still be just as effective.
Yep, absolutely agree. I was not necessarily in a great headspace when we started this journey. And it took years for me to grow into who you all are talking to today. I didn't like Jason from 11, 12 years ago all that much. I'm sure you wouldn't have liked him.
Sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
Siri didn't like him. So, you have to allow for growth, and growth can take place. And that's what God's intentions are.
Someone asked, how do you handle high conflict couples who attend the ministry? That's a great question as well. That's why we have so many other ministry leaders and facilitators. There's 7 couples. So if we notice something is going on with a couple on screen, we can chat with them by direct message and set up opportunities for us to assist and support them in a different forum. We can make the recommendation at that time. We'd like to, connect with you all after this. We want you all to disengage for the moment so we can have a personal moment to connect with you all after this ministry moment, if we're seeing things on screen that, looks like it's putting them in a compromising situation.
So when I mentioned management earlier, one of the things Doc does very beautifully is she always makes sure that there's not this complete dependence on her or on us. She distributes the work and she delegates exceptionally well.
Thank you, dear.
Yeah,
You're just building brownie points all day.
Yeah.
The last question we're going to take, I'm working with a faculty member at Regent, planning a marriage summit. How do you want to contact? How could you contact us? I think Dr. Jen put that there, and we would be very excited to talk with you about that. We love marriages. We love kingdom marriages. We believe in kingdom marriages, and we so appreciate you all taking the time with us today. It's 1 o'clock. We want to honor your lunch hour, and we're going to turn it back over to Jen.
Yeah, I would say use the contact form, please. It gets to us a little bit faster than just traditional email.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much. We are so grateful. Maybe do the claps in your hands or thumbs up or something with everybody here. We're so grateful to have you speaking with us today and sharing your wisdom on such an effective, long-lasting marriage ministry that you've had at the Mount. We're just inspired by your work. Thank you so much for sharing with us and this great presentation. If you are getting continuing education, please don't forget to type in a thank you or a goodbye or put your name in somewhere in the chat so we know you were here till the end, and we'll get that email out to you by tomorrow. So watch for that from the Charis Institute. Thank you so much. We'll let you know about any future events that we have. We're looking at maybe January, February for the next one. Thank you. Bye.